Hi, this is Jen, and thanks for joining me. Today I am making mini cards with some stencils from scrapbook.com. And first off, I just wanted to disclose that these stencils were given to me by scrapbook.com to create cards with. And I've been doing this for the last couple of releases. They have several local card makers, which they asked to make card samples for them. So basically we make cards that they can use in their promo videos. And so I just wanted to disclose that these stencils were given to me with no charge. I was also gifted the 1/8 inch foam adhesive strips in addition to the stencils. And I'm going to go ahead and start out with the star stencil. I am using a piece of Bristol Smooth cardstock. No, I'm using a piece of watercolor paper. I've tried this new format where I have some of the items up on the screen. It helps me when I do my voiceover, and hopefully it helps you. So let me know what you think about that. I don't want it to be intrusive on the video, so let me know what you think. So I'm taking this grit paste from Creative Expressions, and I'm just using that with my palette knife and spreading that over a small area of the card. And I went ahead and I let those stars dry. And then I'm using this Lindy's Magical Shaker. And I know that I popped this color up, but I missed it. So this is Time Travel Teal. So I just spread the powder out a little bit, and then you'll see I'll take my finger and kind of move it around a little bit in areas where it's clumped up a little bit. And then I also use a yellow color, which is California Poppy Gold. And this is another Lindy's Magical Shaker. And once I'm done spreading the color, I go ahead and put a little bit of the powder on my craft mat and water that down and use a paintbrush to splatter the color around the card a little bit. I'm also going to use a die, a Hooray die, and that is from the Frantic Stamper, and I stacked that die, and then I also put embossing ink on it and heat embossed a white embossing powder on top of that, just to give it a little more character or shine on it. And then I put the sentiment for you, so it's Hooray for you. And I tried something different with this video also. At the end of the video, I did a pan over of all the cards I made, and I think it, at least to me, it looks like it gives a lot more detail than what you see on the screen. So don't forget to check that out at the end of the video. Let me know what you think of that also. I'm trying to do some different things with my videos this year, so please do let me know what you think of those, and give me some feedback. For the second card, I'm using the star stencil again. I'm going to do some ink blending with some Distress Oxides, and this is Bristol Smooth cardstock. And the colors I'm using are Chip Sapphire, Faded Jeans, and then I will go around the edges with some black soot. I'm sorry, I've got a little bit of a cold or something, and my throat is super scratchy. So I'm just taking my blending tool, going around the card panel and spreading that ink. And then I'm going to take the star stencil and I'm going to use some Creative Expressions Glitter Kiss in Frosty Sparkle. And I didn't realize I got this out, and I must have used a lot of it because it's almost gone. This is one of my favorite glitter kind of gels, I guess. It's super pretty. So I went ahead and spread that over the card and let that dry. And then I had this die in my stash. I keep all my dies on magnets I used to keep them in binders, and it got too much, and so I took them out. So I just keep them in that plastic binder kind of pocket still. But when I have extra dies, like I don't need them, I always just slip them in with the actual dies in that pocket, so that like this one, that's what happened. That was already in there and already made. So I thought it was perfect for this card. It's a Kaisercraft building die. And I just adhered that. And on the bottom, I did also use scattered straw and antique linen to kind of give it that glow. And then I added a few sentiment strips and also some Nuvo glitter pen. And that completes that card. And for the next card, I'm using the String Lights stencil. This is Bristol Smooth cardstock again. And I'm using several different Distress Oxides. And I'm also using a very small blending brush. And so those smaller blending brush that come in your pack, whether you're getting them from like Pick Event Studios or the brand name for the craft blending brushes, or you're getting them from Amazon, they should have like lots of different sizes, and this one is like a real skinny thin one. It's so perfect for this stencil. The colors I used are Peacock Feathers, Twisted Citron, Shaded Lilac, and Picked Raspberry. And then I had all that extra and I didn't want to waste it, so I just spritzed a piece of Bristol Smooth cardstock that I had, a little square I had left over, and spritz that with water and then turn that stencil over to get that ink off. And then I'll save it with the other card panels that I don't use for some reason at the time. And they're available for some quick and easy cards, like if I need one right away, or I just don't feel like making a panel, they are there for me to use. I'm going to go ahead and use these Honeybee adhesive gems, and these are the Log Cabin. I guess that's the name of them. And I've already created a frame out of white cardstock using a wonky stitched, or actually 2 wonky stitch dies. I created a frame, and I'm just taking my craft pick and I am placing those gems on the little circles of the stencil. And my idea behind this card originally was to make kind of a lifted shaker card, I guess, or a raised shaker card. So I started out one way and I kind of ended up a little bit differently than what I had originally intended, but I still really liked the card. So I went ahead and I took some double-sided adhesive and put that on the one frame and adhered my acetate to that. And then I'm just going to take my second piece of acetate and line that up to make sure that I get the foam on there straight on both sides. So now I'm going to take these foam adhesive strips, these 1/8 inch foam adhesive strips, and I actually do a double layer. So I do a single layer on the portion that is facing the card, and then on the stack portion I do a double layer. So I believe I'm doing a single layer now. And then once I get that single layer of adhesive on the frame, I take my acetate and I lay it back over the frame so that when I do the second or the middle layer of foam, that I get it even and it's not going off of the edges where that you can see it. So this is where I do the double layer foam, and this is going to be the portion that is in between the bottom piece of acetate and the top piece. So where the shaker material is going to be in between these two pieces. So I go ahead and I will take the portion that is going to be adhered to the card and adhere that. And this is where I go ahead and I add that second layer of foam. And I really like these foams. Before, although Scrapbook.com did give me these along with the stencils, I had already purchased a pack from them before that, and I'm really in love with this product because it makes it so easy to do, you know, skinny little lines or sentiment pop-ups or even shakers. I've kind of shied away from doing shakers just because of having to cut the foam. And I know that's not a huge deal, but like I'm really looking forward to just using the heck out of this foam. So I've gone ahead and I've put that first layer of acetate down, and this part was a little bit tricky because there is nothing holding those beads other than static. So luckily there was some static. I did not use my anti-static tool, or what is that? Yeah, on this at all. So a lot of the shaker mix does stick to the foam, but I really like the effect of it. The static kind of makes them hang in there a little bit. So I really like it. I think it's kind of cool. I do end up going around and cutting off the overhang of the acetate for the final card. I didn't end up liking it And so to finish the card off, I'm just using this die from the Stamp Market and adhered that to the card, and that is it. This card really made me want somebody to create a pinball like shaker thing with dies and stuff. I think my sons would actually love a pinball card or something like that. Somebody please make one of those. For this next card, I'm using the String Lights stencil again. And I'm using a piece of cardstock from Michael's. It's kind of like a pink beige color. And I've gone ahead and set the stencil on the cardstock and have used the embossing ink. And I will put the embossing powder I'm using is Ranger Vintage Pearl embossing powder. So I'll go ahead and spread that powder on my card and heat set it. After I've let the powder after I made sure it was dry, probably about 10 seconds, I took the stitched or diamond stitch stencil and placed that over the panel that I just did. And I kind of tried to line up the stitch lines in between the string lights. And I'm taking some Distress Oxide, and the colors I'm using are Festive Berries, Worn Lipstick, and Scattered Straw. And I'm just doing blending out the colors through the stencil in that order. And then I'll go ahead and I'll take the extra ink that's on the stencil and spritz it with the Imagine Crafts shimmer spray. So I'll spray the shimmer spray directly on the stencil, and then I'll also take some water to make sure I can get that color to move around on the card. And I didn't want to use a ton of water just because this cardstock isn't really suited for water. So I went ahead and just kind of ink smushed the stencil, the leftover ink on the stencil onto my card, and then took a wipe and blotted up a little bit of that, and then dried it with my heat tool. And then I colored this cute little elephant, and I was going to use a stamp set that you see in the video, but I did not end up using that. I also stitched my favorite things basic stitch lines, the double stitch and the single stitch at the bottom of the card. It's kind of hard to see just because the stencil is a stitch as well. And then I took these tiny little hearts. They're really light pink hearts. They are super small. They come in kind of like that glitter mix from Michael's that has like 6 different colors in one container. That's what these are. They're just the super tiny little hearts. And so I'm taking my Uchida, I don't know what it's called, the jewel picker tool, which I just got. I absolutely love it. And using my glue tip to put that glue on the card to get those tiny little hearts. And then over several of the hearts, I'm adhering these little rain droplets, and these just happen to be from Address My Craft. I know there's lots of different droplets out there. You can even use the vase mixes from Michael's. I have a whole bunch of those that I use, but it's like a I just think it gives it a cool effect, especially when it dries, kind of like looking through a glass at something. It's kind of hard to see in the video, but I think it looks super cool. And then I went ahead and stacked the love sentiment on the bottom. It's a penny black die, and then another sentiment strip that says love you the most. And that will complete that card. And the next card, I use the diamond stitch stencil again, and I'm going to use the exact same combination as I did on the previous card. Again, I'm using the Bristol Smooth cardstock, and I'm just going to take my blending tool, and I am using the Festive Berries first, and then I will use the Worn Lipstick and then the Scattered Straw. I've been looking at a lot of different color combinations lately. A lot of times I'll go on Pinterest and try and find color combinations like they use for interior design and stuff like that, or paint swatches. And so that's where I get some of my color inspiration. But lately I've been looking at, especially Christina Warner, she has a lot of blending combos already, and so she has a lot of really nice ones out there, and so that's where some of these came from. And then I'm going to go ahead and emboss that stencil. So I am using white pearl embossing powder, and I've already used my Versamark ink. For this stencil, I wanted to dry emboss it, but the stencil is so small, the little lines are so small, I was not able to get a good impression trying to do that. So instead, I'm just using it as a heat embossed stencil. And then I'm going to go back over that with my colors, except in the opposite direction as the original panel. So I'm just going back over the stencil with my blending brush. And then once I do that, I will again take my shimmer spray and water, or maybe I just take the water on this one and smush that against the panel. And then once that's done, I'll take a paper towel and kind of wipe up some of that excess ink that's on the panel. And then I will also take my heat tool and dry that the rest of the way. But I like that the look that this gives, kind of a little bit of a faded look. And then just the faint impression of the stencil with the embossing powder. So I found this cute little cat character in my stamps, and this is a Fun Stampers Journey stamps called Cats and Dogs. And I thought it was super cute, so I colored him with some shaker powders. I don't recall which colors exactly. And then I created a frame for him to hang around in. And then the two little fish bones that he has are from a old Spellbinders kit. And the sentiment is a Concord and Ninth sentiment. And then here I'm just using my jelly roll pen to give him some details. But when I was fussy cutting him out, I chopped his hand off on accident. And so I didn't want to trash the card, so I went ahead and just put him like he's hanging onto the side of the card. Added some sequins and some Morning Dew Nuvo crystal drops, and that will complete that card. I also put some glossy on his nose. But I think the sentiment goes perfectly with his face. Love your face. So this is the Slimline card, or what do they call the... I had it and I totally forgot. The long card, the legal size card. So the good thing about these 6x8 stencils is that they cover a Slimline card very well without having to do multiple, move the stencil multiple times. So for the stencil, since it does have some thin lines, I went ahead and I took it outside and sprayed it with some stencil adhesive to make sure it stayed secure while I was doing the coloring. So I'm just watercoloring with some Catherine Pooler inks, and I'm doing it pretty much in rainbow order. So I go in rainbow order once, and then I reverse, and then once I'm done with the going all the way across the card, I lift the stencil and then I flip it around so that I can get more lines. That part of the video I lost. I wasn't recording and I thought I was. So I do apologize for that. The colors that I'm using for Catherine Pooler with the Catherine Pooler inks are Party Dress, Bellini, Melon Ice, Fiesta Blue, Pixie Dust, and Meant to Be. And so I just did 6 colors of the rainbow instead of 7. And then once I was done, there was a little bit of adhesive that got stuck on the card. And so I'm just running my hand across, and any of the rough spots, I'm using my Tombow Mono sand eraser, which is so handy for, it took the stencil adhesive off of this super well. It also works great for removing ink marks. So it's a really handy dandy tool to have. They also have Tombow also has one that is a sand eraser and a regular eraser. And then I went ahead and stamped up with this Ranger Letter It stamp set, Make a Wish and Blow Out the Candles. It's a sentiment. And then I took a strip of cardstock and I used those same Catherine Pooler inks down the side panel and adhere that to the right side of the card. And then I'm popping the card panel up with some foam tape. I added a fuel. I added a few, I did it again. I added a few gems, and that completes that card. I really like the effect that the stencil had, though, and you can do lots of, I mean, you can do it in different directions or diagonal, so it's really versatile. And then for this card, I'm taking the Mod Circles stencil. I'm using Bristol Smooth cardstock. And I'm using just the Distress inks this time. And so the inks that I'm using for this are Seedless Preserves, Victorian Velvet, and Antique Linen. And at the beginning of this card, I was kind of showing the card. Hopefully you could see it. I did dry emboss this, so it does have that embossed, the stencil is embossed onto the card. And I'm just starting with the Seedless Preserves, kind of going in the middle and trying to fade out the color a little bit. And then I will take the remaining colors and go ahead and fade those out as well around the edges. So I just put a little bit of each color in the center, and then I'm going to take the stencil and go around with the colors again through the stencil. And I did try and line the stencil up with the embossed image. So I'm just taking my blending brush and going around and trying to kind of give the edges a little bit of a faded look. And then I take the Antique Linen, which is the lightest color, and go over each of those areas. And then with the other colors as well. And then I also take each of the colors and swipe those on my craft mat and spritz them, of course, with the shimmer spray. Or actually, I only take Seedless Preserves and Victorian Velvet, and then do some ink splatters on my card. And then I'm using this Technique Tuesday Happy Butterfly die, and I've just ink blended that Seedless Preserves color on another piece and cut that die out. And then I've cut a circle out of vellum and adhered the butterfly to the vellum, which I adhered to the card. And then I'm taking my fine line red top glue, which I love, and adhering a few sequins. And then I also adhered a sentiment that just says hello butterfly, or not hello butterfly. The sentiment says hello beautiful, and that will complete that card. It's just one of my favorites, I think. Super simple, but really pretty, I think. So the next two cards are the last two cards, and they are super quick and easy. I am using this mirror card from Tonic, and this is pink chiffon, and this is super easy. So I'm just dry embossing this. So I'm taking the teardrop floral stencil, and I will run that through my Big Shot, and it gives this really pretty embossed image, which I use both the negative and the positive of this cardstock. So I'm going to use this die. It's an Altenew die. It's called Mega Thanks. And the die is too big to fit on a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, so it has to go horizontal. So I'm going to take the die and I'll go ahead and cut that out. And then with I believe this is the negative space. I get them mixed up all the time. I'm going to go ahead and take my glitter glue and adhere that piece to my card base. And I'm sure there's an easier way to do this. I'm pretty sure I've seen an easier way, but this is the way I did it. And then I just took the pieces that filled in, like the A and all the pop-off pieces, and glued those in, and then I'll pull up that thanks portion. And so I will use that on another card. And this one's pretty much complete. I'm just getting some of the adhesive off the card. I do add a little heart jewel, and that's it pretty much. That finishes that card. I think with that really pretty mirror cardstock, it doesn't need anything else. So here I'm going to use the actual cutout portion of the thanks. I think that's the positive piece. And for this card, I'll be using the Buffalo Check stencil and some Bristol Smooth cardstock. I'm going to use some Distress Oxides again and Wild Honey and Spice Marmalade. So I'm just going to take my blending tool on my Bristol Smooth and spread out that Wild Honey about halfway down the card. I'm just fading it out a little bit on the end. And then I'm going to take the stencil over the top of that. And then I will take the Spice Marmalade and blend that over. And I'm trying to get it mainly in the areas where there's that, I don't know what that's called. Mainly in the striped areas, I guess, to get more of the striped effect rather than fill in the solids. I'm trying to do it really lightly, or blend the ink really lightly over those solid squares. And then I'll remove the stencil and blend out the Wild Honey on the bottom of the card. And have it fade in towards the top portion that I already did. And I leave just a little bit of white space in between those. And then I will set the stencil down again and go back in with my Spice Marmalade, kind of doing the same thing as I did with the top portion. And I had a lot of indecision on this card about what to do with the thanks. And I just joined a card making Facebook group not that long ago, and so I asked their opinion. I got a way overwhelming response, and I was just so grateful for all of the feedback I got. And the question was whether I should use the black circle or not. I did end up using the black circle, and I think it turned out really well. So here I'm just panning over the cards. I'm hoping this gives you a really close-up view of some of the little details on the cards, like the glitter and all of that. So I'm just going to pan over all of the cards that were created. So usually when I make multiple cards, I will go ahead and kind of just do a last kind of overview of the cards, holding them up to the screen. But I thought I would do kind of like a pan over where you can see, I think this way you can see some of the detail, the glitter and stuff a little bit better than you can with me just holding the cards up. So let me know what you think about that. Also, I'm really interested in hearing what you think about some of the different things that I've done with the video as far as adding in the products popped up on the screen. Do you like that? Yes, no? I'm just trying to do some different things to make my videos a little bit better. It's going to be a work in progress. I just want them to be a little more streamlined and clean. And realistically for me, I know that my videos probably will never be super sparkly clean just because of the way that I create cards. I don't always have a full follow-through plan for my cards, and so sometimes I think of stuff later in the process than rather at the beginning, or if I had known it at the beginning, I wouldn't be able to make it more streamlined, I guess. So my son wanted to say hello.
Hello.
So this is my son Axel, my 7-year-old, almost 20. As always, thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video or found it informative, please go ahead and give me a thumbs up. If you are not a subscriber and you would like to subscribe and see future videos, please go ahead and hit that red subscribe button. Thank you so much, and I'll catch you next time.